In 2022 and 23, the EU project RESET, Redesigning Equality and Scientific Excellence Together, conducted its media campaign. In its first phase, Behind the Scenes, the campaign portrayed members of the academic staff, namely female academic staff, who work in research support positions in the form of a digital photo exhibition. You find the link to the exhibition as well as to the video about this phase of the campaign in the description. Linked to the campaign, we are pleased to share with you a lecture with our project leader, Marion Paoletti, who gives insights behind the scenes and on the situation of administrative staff at universities in the context of university mergers. We are pleased to have Marion Paoletti talking with us. She will give a very interesting lecture about the impact of a university merger on professional equality, focusing on the administrative side. Marion Paoletti is a distinguished expert in political sociology, focusing on the evolution of democracy and issues related to gender politics, citizen participation, and direct democracy. Since 2013, she has been a member of the scientific interest group Democracy and Participation. From 2014 to 2021, Paoletti served as the officer in charge of parity, equality and diversity at the University of Bordeaux, where she developed a keen interest in professional equality. Paoletti is the project leader of RESET, Redesigning Equality and Scientific Excellence Together, and therefore aims at implementing gender equality plans encompassing initiatives from the master's level to emeritus status to enhance gender equality in professional settings at universities. Another focal point of her research is investigating on the impact of organizational mergers on the careers of both women and men, which is also the focal point of our lecture. Paoletti's work is pivotal in understanding and influencing the dynamics of gender in the political and academic arenas, contributing significantly to the discourse on democracy and participation in society.
Hello, Victoria. Thank you for this podcast. So I'm going to present a study about the impact of a university merger on professional equality, focusing on the administrative side and concerning the French case, only the French case, I'm sorry. To start, I'd like to say a few words about the Shanghai ranking. You know, this ranking of the world's 500 best university in the world. And this ranking was established in 23, and it was an immediate and dazzling success, particularly in France. So we know that the ranking is now contested, including by China, which has withdrawn from it. And this ranking is now faces a competition from other ranking, for instance, the time higher education with a more qualitative way to do, but its success is still significant by objectifying a hierarchy that was previously either informal or non-existent, a hierarchy between researcher and university. This ranking creates the condition for a university market, not mainly perhaps a capitalist market, but a competition between university, between researcher. Every university in the world wants to transcend its position in order to obtain more funding and attract the best students and researcher. It is based on a measure of scientific productivity, you know, number of publications, number of citations, scientific prizes, without including disciplines such as the humanities or social sciences. So the impact in France has been particularly significant, coinciding with the spreading of the new public management. So new public management, new management public is a doctrine of state reform that has been at work in all public sectors in Europe and in the world since the 90s, contributing to the competition between agents, services, and administration. And administrative major reform policies have been an important part of government agendas in every country since this time. So, there's a book in political science of Kitchener and Gask, very famous about the administrative measures. And they used the expression merger mania to qualify this movement, this spreading of new public management and merger, specifically in the academic sector. And as I said, the first edition of the Shanghai ranking was a very big shock in France. And France's response has been, on the one hand, to give universities and their presidents greater autonomy through a very famous law in 27, and above all, to encourage universities to group together and merge. And according to a report by the European University Association, France ranked first in Europe for the number of mergers carried out between 20 and 2015. So the first rank for the merger in university, and with the idea of federating skills to make merger more visible, this idea is very predominant. So administrative merger and the impact of rankings on academic space are being studied extensively a lot at European level. In this podcast, I'd like to focus on a narrower issue, the impact of a merger on the administrative careers of women and men in a university. In a merger, it is primarily the administrative staff who are affected, more than the scientific staff in the laboratories and faculties, with the exception, of course, of researchers who exercise political function at university level, but there are very few. It's a question, merger is a question for administrative staff primarily. Among the administrative staff, some are heavily involved in the merger, others are affected by the mobility involved, and still others, the most numerous, are not really affected because their working class doesn't change with the merger. And in this communication, I'll focus on the administrative staff most involved in the merger, in its design and in the mobility process, from a gender perspective defined as a system of hierarchical bicategorization between the sexes and between the values associated with them due to the Berenice definition. So in my case, 600 people were affected by the merger between January 2011 and January 2014, including 314 administrative staff involved in actual mobility, mainly linked to the disappearance or substantial modification of their position. And this number is a modest number compared with the 2,700 administrative staff employed by the new merged university, officially launched at 1st January 2014. So the aim of the study, and sorry to be too long, is to assess, with this introduction, is to assess the impact of the merger on the administrative careers of mobile staff by gender and by French civil service category. So A, B, C. A is the top, C is the bottom. So the question, very big question, is how do women and men in the civil service actually deal with the merger? How do they take advantage of or not of the professional opportunity, as an interview said to me? A professional opportunity offered by the reform is a major project which requires total commitment to progress, the same opportunity for men and women. So the case is the merger that took place on 1st January 2014 between 3 universities in Bordeaux. And this merger creates the University of Bordeaux, the one from whom I speak today. This is an incomplete merger, as it doesn't include one of the 4 universities on the site, the University of Humanities, and 2 higher education schools. And it's important to understand that it's part of a process of rapprochement based on previous successes in the course for projects of the 2000s, in particular something called IDEX. That is to say, a system whereby universities are put into competition by the state, the national state, to obtain national funds in order to be labeled as excellent. So the study I am presenting is based on various documents, relating to the history of the major and the mobility of agents, a quantitative analysis of the mobility trajectories or not of the 340 agents who applied for the waves of mobility, and also around 20 interviews conducted in 2017 and 2018 with Clément Aramburu, with staff mainly in position of administrative responsibility. So it seems to me that the study fits well in the concept of inclusive and collective excellence promoted by research, whereas major are the result of the so-called excellence policies. And also the study focuses on university staff who are often more invisible than teaching and research staff. So the administrative, technical, health, social services, and library staff in university grouped together here under the broad category of administrative staff, even, if there are health staff, social staff, technical staff. So I'm going to be too quick. The results were published in a book. I don't know if you can see it. I co-edited in 2021, Policy of Merger. So I'm sorry, it's in French, but if you can read French and want to have more detail, you can see this book. And to sum up the result very quickly, the result shows that despite the absence of a gender equality focus in the merger process between 2011 and 2014, and the gender blind nature of the merger, women are not the losers in the process, particularly when they are young and in management. We can state the persistence of a small glass ceiling at the level of the very top management, a level that we call in French Directorate General of Administrative Services. But despite the small glass ceiling, some women, already directors or even, B manager in the middle category, have seized the opportunity for significant advancement at the cost of a very considerable investment. That brings the question we want to examine today, the question of the work-life balance, the cost of the work-life balance if you want to progress in your career during a merger. So perhaps you can see, you can move, Victoria, and show the agenda of the presentation. Sorry to be long, I'm going to be quicker to do it quickly. But I want to show in the first point that the fact that professional equality was not taken into account at the time of the merger. In a second point, I'd like to understand the gender of a merger and the place on the top management of the merger of men and women. So it was an history of men, the major, as the big chief of administration said to me in interview. But despite this gender of the merger, the participative major projects appear to be rather favorable to the promotion of young women in strengthened administrative departments. So my first point, gender equality, that wasn't on the agenda at all during the time of the merger. So it's, perhaps I can say it's normal, you know, because the issue of gender equality was not an issue between in France. Between 2011 and 2014, of course, there has been an equality policy in the civil service since the early 2000s, but it did not specifically concern the academic sector. In France, the national equality obligation relating specifically to the higher education sector date from 2013 and focus more on equality in scientific career. So the gender configuration of the merger, an history of man in the world of the Director General, the Director General of Services of the major university in 2014, does not favor the egalitarian framing of the reform. And despite these facts, as I will show, it's rather favorable to young women. So it wasn't framing equality, doesn't frame the merger at all, because equality seems to be already there. Equality is already there, as someone said it to me. Because this feeling is due that the vast majority of the workforce of administrative side is made up of women. On 1st January 2014, the new organization had almost 2,700 administrative staff, 1/3 of whom were men and 2/3 women, in exactly the opposite ratio to researchers. So in contrast to the researchers' world, administrative world is a feminist professional world in which women hold visible position of responsibility. 2 of the 3 chief of administration of the merged university were women, for example, and women, whether civil servants or on not contract, on fixed term contract or not, make up the vast majority of the high-level manager, 62% to be precise. They account for the majority of the 60% of the 38 management positions identified in the of the 3 universities immediately prior to the merger. So for everyone, okay, there's no problem, equality is already there, that's not a question. And despite this, and perhaps you can move, sorry, Victoria. Yes, it's a situation I'm going to present it, but despite the feeling of equality in administrative staff, there was, of course, invisible inequality, as shown by the gender structure of the employment of administrative staff by head count after the merger. Sorry, Victoria, you can move again.
Yes.
Perhaps we're going to go back on this situation after. I know that, okay, this presentation is not very clear, but we can rapidly say that, okay, women make up the majority of our staff, but, okay, men are in the minority in the our staff, but men are proportionally more likely to be in a category A and less likely to be in category C. To try to say it more clearly, okay, men are very few in the administrative staff, but they're likely to be, you know, more likely to be a manager. Okay, and also it's very important to say that women are more likely than men to be employed on an ended contract basis. This is particularly true for category C. So despite this, despite this invisible inequality, as a lot of people say, we never talked about it, equality wasn't on the agenda, it wasn't mentioned, and all that. And it appears to be a man business, major as a man business, and it's my second point. So perhaps it's important to understand that the measure was very smooth at University of Bordeaux, and it is an exception in the French cases. It has been prepared over time with the prior success of the excellence funds, presupposing a habit of working together. Like I said about the IDEX, the success of the different university in obtaining the IDEX, very important funds and new funds for French university. And there was also, and it's an exception, an absence of competitions between the main player. There is no competition for the position of president, and there was no competition also with the position of chief of the administration, the director general of services. The director general of the services of the new merged university is the former director of the University of Science and Technology. He was appointed prefigurator of the new university at the beginning of 2013, and his position was completely naturalized from the very beginning of the merger in 2011. So I'm not going to detail why there's no competition, such a consensus, and all that. This man was present to be highly competent at the time of the merger, as his university was perceived by the staff involved in the merger as a benchmark of administrative greatness in contrast to one of the other universities. So he was supposed to be, and he was, in fact, very competent. So his leadership was not a question. And of course, so the political and administrative leadership of the merger is totally embodied by men, but this doesn't prevent a few women from playing a role, usually behind the scene. Two women in particular play a huge role behind the scene, but they didn't make feminist speeches at all. So these two women, in particular, a woman in the shadows, but with very considerable weight and competence in defining strategy. She will become, the deputy for the strategy of the chief of the administration in 2014 at the time of the merger. And afterward, with a new election of the president in 2018, she became the vice president in charge of the strategy, which is extremely rare for someone from the administration, And the other woman is the director during the merger of the operational department, specifically recruited at the end of 2011 to support the design and implementation of the project. So this operational department during the fusion will become, in the new merged university, a new department after the merger, the continuous improvement department. But this woman will not be leading it as she had opted and was entitled to expect. This direction of the operational department will be occupied by a man, a friend of the chief of the administration, and the former chief of the administration of a merged university. So perhaps you can, sorry for, but you can go back to the previous slide, please.
Yes.
No, sorry, it was a citation. Sorry to not be very clear, but the citation you had shown, Victoria, previously, is a citation from the General Director of Services to say that equality was not an issue at all during the merger. But I'd like you to show another side. Can you move? Okay, for instance, this one, it is another extract of its interview. And it shows the weight of the chief of the administration, the weight that we can see in the top level recruitment he carried. In interview, you know, he considers that he has had a free hand in putting together the team of its deputies, his deputies. Sorry. And he has mainly recruited men. We know, you know, that homosexuality sometimes tends to be confused with the pleasure of career management reported by this director. A way to say that he recruited the man he has the habit, you know, to work with them, and this fact highlight so his administrative leadership. We can see it. So if you move perhaps Victoria, we can see that at the top management there's a little glass ceiling, and in contrast with this situation, the merger has been favorable to women in management position, particularly in the 30-40 age bracket, whose representation in this position has increased by 10 points compared to the previous situation in the various university. The position of women increased from 60% to 70% at this level of director. And there are a number of reasons. I am in my third point right now. I don't know if you can show the agenda of the presentation in order to be perhaps more clear. So I am in my third point, men and women in the merger concretely. And as I said, the part of women increases for the director level, not the deputies of the chief, but the director of services. And there are number of reasons for this. The age structure of administrative jobs, where women are overwhelming in the 30-40 age bracket, their willingness to take part in the participative project and submit application more than men in the mobility waves, the selection procedures, open application, may be less likely to activate gender stereotypes than appointments, and the fact that women are more likely to adhere to managerial principles than older men, who are less likely to be rewarded after the merger. So first of all, the involvement in working groups during the participative project. To sum up it was exciting but exhausting, as someone said. So the participative project launched in 2012 to prepare for the measures appears to be, a participatory mode to do. Come on, everyone, participate to the measure and all that, but also vertical and well-defined, with working groups coordinator, and all that. So the first issue is to be, appointed as a working group coordinator, validated by the president's committee. And these appointments are based on call for volunteers, but also on strong initiative from the VPs who have their own agenda and want their university to be well represented. So, for instance, to illustrate this case, if you can move again. For instance, here, if you can take the time to read, it's the case of a new female director in central services who didn't feel legitimate to candidate too young, and all that. But her VP and a VP in charge of administration really encourage her, to apply. Because he also wanted his university to be represented. So, for instance, some women benefited from the major because they were really encouraged to candidate. Okay, this I don't know how to say it, but the major was a real escalator for their career. So from the first issue was to be a coordinator of working group, and the coordinator steers the groups and take part in the other groups while continuing to carry out the work in the original post, original post, a job made very complex, more complex by the fact that they have to, as someone said, juggle between the bodies of several institutions and supply the domain coordinator who group together several groups with deliverable. So involvement in the working groups was a condition to progress during the major, but also, helps to gain recognition from the political and administrative leaders of the other institution and from colleagues. So everyone agrees that the pace of the work was very intense and that the process was also exciting. So perhaps you can move, Victoria, to show the perception from administrative staff, how exhausting but also exciting was this moment. Okay. Sorry, and to be long, I just want to highlight that administrative science has shown that people in their 30s are more clearly in favor, of the managerial dynamic. And this constitutes a kind of bureaucratic common sense that was confirmed in the major studied. So I know, Victoria, how you are concerned by work-life balance. The question of work-life balance explain for a part the commitment of young administrative staff and especially women, because, on the one hand, family life makes geographical mobility difficult for university managers, while internal promotion opportunities are limited. The major represents a unique opportunity for career progression for mothers who sometimes bring up children on their own. And perhaps you can move, Alexandra. Here, it is a case of a middle management women in a middle management who had with major a great promotion. She was only B, and a lot of men we were E and all that were sure to have the position of the chief of an intermediate structure. She got it. And it was, and you can see, if you want, the comment of our former general director, and especially she comments this, and I think it explains a part of the commitment of young women. I think the women were more attractive. That's true. That I have observed. Is that as society changes, you have more and more divorced women, single women, and I have noticed that they hang in there to progress in their job. They are prepared to do a lot of things to earn more and get by. I've seen this with my colleague, and this young woman said, it was the chance of my life. I did everything I can to have the job and all that. So it's a way, to link this question with work-life balance. And in the other hand, some women who were unable to get involved in the major for family reasons expressed a lot of regret For example, a department manager, a woman who was mobilized in 2012 by a sick child, while her husband, a researcher, reacted by over investing in his work, as she said. This woman said that she missed the boat on the merger. And you can see what she said. When you are in a major, you can afford to have a complicated personal life. And she had, until now, great regrets to have missing the boat, as she said. So I know it is a common administrative sense, but the promotion of manager age 30, 40, most of whom, as I said, are women, even more than in the older age bracket, the promotion of manager age 30, 40 was not intentionally sought, but appears to be the product of selection tools. This is feeling, and you can move, for instance, of our current human resource responsible, and also to the general director of service in 2018, perhaps, you know, for your concern, Victoria, in work-life balance, I can just read his sentence, his extract of interview. The double working day during the manager immediately created a kind of social determinism with those who wanted it and very quickly saw that it was an opportunity for them to progress in their careers, to get a boost, and those we take a backseat. And we can see that for work-life balance, some women really size it as an opportunity. And also with work-life balance, some women missed the boat, if I can say. Sorry to be too long, just to finish, you know, to see how agents deal with the waves of mobility. So in a merger, some departments disappear because they duplicate other. Some department increase the size of some department, increase a lot, of course, because of the merger, while others emerge because, you know, the aim of the merger is also to modernize and transform the administration as part of the reform. So the 340 staff members concerned by the mobility chain were effective in 5 successive waves, from the very top to the very down, very bottom, with a major formalized process. And you know, the process of the wave of mobility, of the recruitment, and all that, I think depend on an exemplary process. It was very important, you know, to have an exemplary process to create, you know, the feeling of belonging to a new university. Such is to say, for example, publication of posts, calls for application, creation of an application for submitting application, organization of juries, which has to include members from at least 3 merged institutions, production of a mobility charter and a guide for applicants. 7 training courses have been also set up on CV writing and interview skills, and a career advisor has been appointed to support staff. So, you know, you can see a process that willing to be exemplar. So 340 people applied as part of the mobility waves, while over 860 people whose position remained unchanged during the fusion by the merger, were assigned to the new organization on an agreement, you know, because their working class didn't change at all. It was completely painless for them, as a director said to me in interview. So the open recruitment procedure, initially designed for manager, but applied to all, is new for a university major. The example of a major with direct appointments to administrative workplace having served served in part of as a counter model. So in view of the timetable, sorry for the time, I'll pass on the procedure itself and how it was perceived by the agent concerned. I think it was noting that some agents at the bottom of the hierarchy seemed very uncomfortable with this procedure. We can see when we see the quantitative, who apply, who's get the job and all that, we can see the greater willingness on the part of women to take up the chance. On average, they apply more than men and are faced with more candidates. For example, for the wave 1, so in the administrative department of the central services, comprising 17 positions for 31 applicants, 20 women and 11 men. 4 men were the only applicants for their position: finance, prevention and safety, IT services, logistics director, while only 1 woman in the same situation, communication. So, okay, we can see the highly gendered nature of the position with no competition at this level. The more competitive position so is but the international relation director, but okay, went to a woman, but due to the time I switched. Both specialization in the intern knowledge, generated by the working groups, seems to reduce competition for director posts, and as you can see, especially for men. At the end of the wave 1, 16 positions were filled by 6 men and 10 women. The mobility offered as part of the measure was generally appreciated by the manager, who benefit from it as recognition of their work in their establishment and of their commitment to the major project. The benefits were less clear for category C staff in 2014, but after they perhaps can take advantage of it because the measure opened up further opportunity for geographical mobility, between different sites of the new merged university, particularly in order to move closer to home. And we can see after that category C staff particularly took advantage of this possibility to move closer home and to facilitate a work-life balance. So sorry for the time, just perhaps a sentence to conclude. Also, the measure was not linked to the discussion on professional equality for administrative staff in the university sector, which came later. It did represent a professional opportunity for young women who started it with great enthusiasm and at a time when routine internal mobility was rare, as was a geographical mobility for family reasons. In the 30-40 age bracket, there are proportionally more women than in the older age bracket, and promotion on merit, and true recognition of the work done during the major perhaps favors them more than appointment, which are always likely to activate stereotypes. So thank you for your attention. I'm ready for some questions. Perhaps you can move the slide to see. No, I haven't forgotten. I have forgotten no. So I have forgotten no slide. So I'm happy with that.
Yes, thank you very much, Marion, for giving this very interesting insights. So I will stop the presentation, but not the recording, in order to ask you two more questions. Yes, a question that came to my mind was, you mentioned a lot how this whole process had some advantages for young women in general. So these were some effects of the merger. But could you say something more maybe about the costs that were also part of this process also for young women?
Yes, of course. So I tried to describe that commitment, but I haven't shown so many extracts of the interview, but they really described how tired they were They describe the way, they work on day and on night, all the weekend. It was really a huge work. I tried to describe it. I'm not going to repeat me, but I was very, very impressed perhaps by the fact that 3 women, so I didn't make a lot of interview, 20 to be honest, with men and women, but 3 women said that the merger, 3 women felt that their divorce, their separation was totally linked to this period of intense work. Of course, we don't know exactly what happens in couple. Perhaps there were probably other reasons, but I was really, really impressed by the fact that in their mind, it's very clear. The merger cost me my divorce, my separation, and all that. So well, I know you are thinking a lot about work-life balance, and we can see with this topic. So, of course, merger is an exception during a life of a university, but we know that there's a lot of times of intense work. And we can see that, okay, directors say, it's an opportunity for you and all that, but it's a common discourse, perhaps, to say it. And okay, it works. I think it works for young women in the majority cases, but not for all. I have highlighted the case of this woman that for work-life balance, her husband, a researcher, overreacting by over-investing in job when their child was sick. But she really spent all her time in hospital and all that. So that. But okay, we can consider that a merger is an exception, but I think that there's no limit in time where sometimes say to you, it's an opportunity for you. So we have also to be very conscious of this.
Yes, thank you very much. So also in terms of giving some more insights on how this whole process, what context the process was in. So you also said that there was a European report that ranked France first in the number of university mergers in Europe between 2000 and I think 2015. And so why was the Shanghai ranking such a shock in France and produced such a wave of university mergers?
Yes, so I think I have read quite a lot about the impact of Shanghai on the European research area. So I think that the impact of this ranking is real everywhere in Europe, but especially in France. In France, sorry. But it was a great shock because the prestigious grande école, I don't know how to say it in English, the big schools are completely absent of the Shanghai ranking, totally absent. And for France, the grande école is a source of pride in France. Very elitist, but we thought that it was the best in the world. So, okay, it was a shock. They lack, this grand école lack the critical mass to develop high quality research in all the sciences, and STEM in particular. As for the university, they simply don't have enough financial resources to compete with their counterparts. And also the French specificity, the French particularity on an autonomous research agency with CNRS is not taken into account in the ranking. So there's a lot of aspects that explain that France was in the first ranking so badly ranked. And the answer, as I said, was to give more autonomy to the president of the university. And this major mania in France to become bigger and bigger, with effect in the ranking of France in the Shanghai ranking, but also big effect in the way to work at universities, the competition, the pressure, and all that. Yesterday I spoke with a colleague of mine, and he said, I don't know how to say it in English, Marie, if you can help me, to ralentir, to get down.
To slow down?
To slow down, of course. To slow down is a collective issue for all academic workers. And we were thinking how to slow down.
Yes, that's a really good point. I think that could be also a topic for the next event, to talk about this dimension of slowing down and thinking about other ways. That would be very interesting. So, Marion, thank you very much for giving these insights. I think it's very interesting and useful also to know some these different aspects of our university systems, and also to take more into account these administrational and organizational aspects of mergers and the political dimensions of it. And you showed so good how the gender dimension is also always a part of these processes, also if they are not intended or are not in the focal point of analysis of these processes. So thank you very much for pointing this out. And yes, I'm looking forward to discuss with you again soon about these interesting topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victoria.